Hi guys, I'm Brett Manning of the new Aussie Constitution Trust. Imagine if a car salesman said to you, would you like to buy a car? You think about it for a minute. Yeah, I might. And the car salesman says, great, sign here. What's your reaction? You're going to say, what am I buying? What type of car is it? How much power does it have? How much is it going to cost me? And the salesman's answer to that is, don't worry, we've got some experts. We'll work that out for you afterwards. That's a scenario that is crazy, but it's the same scenario that we're being given with the proposed constitutional change for the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice to Parliament. Now let me just say, from a transparency point of view, right up front, that I would actually support an amendment for an Indigenous voice to Parliament. What I don't support is the approach that is being taken for this change. The reason we have a constitution is to set down those things that cannot be changed by the government of the day without the approval of the people. So these are the really important matters. And that's the whole reason why Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders have asked for their voice to Parliament to be enshrined in the Constitution. Well, what we've got is something completely different. What we've got is a referendum that asks, do you support an Indigenous voice to Parliament? Good, basic, simple question. But the proposed draft wording changes to the Constitution itself are basically 3 sentences. There shall be a body to be called the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Voice. Fair enough. The Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Voice may make representations to Parliament and the Executive Government on matters relating to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Again, fair enough. But the trick is in the 3rd sentence. The Parliament shall, subject to this Constitution, have the power to make laws with respect to the composition, the function, the powers and procedures of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice. That means that the Parliament of the day, and not just this current Parliament, but any future Parliament, can make the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice anything it wants. Absolutely anything. So this change doesn't even say that the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice will actually contain any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. It might imply that, but legally it does not state that. And there's just no scope around this proposed change. So for one government, that may mean spending a very large amount of money on establishing a very complicated Indigenous voice to Parliament. Then the next government to come in could tear all that down and appoint one person. And furthermore, if the Parliament is going to determine what the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice is, why can't it do that now? It doesn't need a constitutional amendment to do that. It just needs to pass that through Parliament. I understand there might be some that would believe that if they keep this amendment very simple, Australians will generally support it and it'll go through and be approved. Whereas if they provide detail of what it actually means, what the powers of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice is going to be, how it will be made up, how people will be elected, how they'll communicate with the Parliament or the Executive Government. If it set down this sort of detail, at least at a basic level, perhaps it's got less chance of passing. But then all you're really doing is tricking the Australian people. You're dumbing them down. You're assuming that they can't make a decision on their own. And it's just the wrong approach. And if we take this approach going forward to when we put a vote up on whether we want to cease to be a monarchy and become a republic, if we took this same approach, the Parliament will be deciding everything about how the government runs. And the whole idea of having a constitution is to prevent the government of the day from making changes to the basic systems of our government without the approval of the people. So the government can keep the question: do you support an alteration to the Constitution that establishes an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander voice? But then it must back that up with the basic framework and structure of what that voice would be, so that people can understand what powers it has, how it will operate, and what it might cost in comparison to other functions of government, so that people can make an informed decision. All good stakeholder management is about informed decision. What we're being asked to do here is make a very uninformed decision, and one that's completely flawed because it can be changed by any government in the future. And as soon as we give constitutional powers to the Parliament of the day, there's no point having a constitution, and it's all in the lap of the gods. Now, as you may be aware, the new Aussie Constitution Trust is proposing a replacement Australian Constitution, but that is a fully drafted document, fully drafted from start to finish, so that we can debate it and we can discuss it and people can see what is proposed. And currently it includes an Indigenous voice to Parliament. Now, I've been asked that if this referendum goes through and a decision is made by the Australian people to have an Indigenous voice or to not have an Indigenous voice, will I reflect that in the draft of the new Aussie Constitution? And the answer is absolutely yes. Because that is exactly what the referendums are there for, to do. They provide the decision of the people, and the decision of the people is final. So, if the people decide not to have an Indigenous voice to Parliament, then I'll remove that from the draft new Aussie Constitution. If they decide to support it, then it will remain in the draft. You know, I understand there are arguments on both sides of this particular decision. But I'm also very concerned about the future and the bigger decision about whether we become a republic, whether Australia becomes truly independent or it remains a monarchy. And so the new Aussie Constitution provides a fully drafted option to consider, to talk about, to debate individual points. And that allows us to amend and improve that before it could be put to the people for consideration and a decision. So I call on those in the government who are putting forward this referendum not to change the question, but to change the detail that's going into the constitutional change. Get the basic framework down so that we can see what the Indigenous voice to Parliament will look like, who it will be made up of, how much is it going to cost, and what functions and powers will it have. These fundamental things need to be locked into the Constitution. Otherwise, we are just tricking Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders that they have a voice to Parliament, because they may or may not in the future. If we're going to do this, let's do it genuinely. Let's get a genuine answer from the people, and let's make sure that the people are informed before they have to take a decision. Feel free to check out the new Aussie Constitution at the new Aussie Constitution Trust website at www.newaussieconstitution.com.au. Thanks for your time.